and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that Congress will establish an independent commission to investigate the Capitol riots. In a letter to the lawmakers, Pelosi said the commission will be modeled on the 9/11 terror attacks inquiry. This comes after U.S. Senate acquitted former President Donald Trump of the charge of inciting the riots that left 5 people dead. People have died after a boat capsized in a river in Western Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Minister for Humanitarian Action said around 300 people have been rescued, but more than 240 are still missing. He says 700 people were on board the vessel that sank in MYANMar province. In Iraq, a civilian contractor of the U.S.-led coalition in Iraq has been killed in a rocket attack outside the Erbil International Airport. In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said several American contractors were wounded in the attack. In a phone call with Kyrgyzstan's Prime Minister, Blinken called for a probe and promised to hold the culprits accountable. The United Nations has warned Myanmar's army of severe consequences for any harsh response to anti-coup protesters. In a statement, UN spokesperson Farhan Haq also denounced internet shutdown in the country. Meanwhile, demonstrators have taken to the streets across the country, demanding an end to the military rule and release of political leaders. The World Health Organization has approved AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine for emergency use. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has proposed a global treaty on pandemics to ensure proper transparency. Pakistan has registered over 1,000 infections and 47 fatalities overnight, raising the death toll to 12,380. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.4 million lives and infected over 109 million people. And in tennis, Naomi Osaka has charged into semi-finals of the Australian Open. The former will #1 thrashed Taiwanese Shih Tzu Wei 6-2, 6-2 in the quarterfinals. The 2019 champion will meet either Serena Williams or Simona Halep in the semi-final. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that Congress will establish an independent commission to investigate the Capitol riots. This comes after the U.S. Senate acquitted former President Donald Trump of the charge of incitement of insurrection. In a letter to the lawmakers, Pelosi said the commission will be modeled on the 9/11 terror attacks inquiry. She said it was critical to get to the truth of how the violence occurred. The House Speaker added the body will also investigate interference with the peaceful transfer of power. It will also investigate the preparedness and response of law enforcement agencies. Pelosi said the Congress needed to allocate more funds for the security of lawmakers and the Capitol. In Iraq, a civilian contractor of the U.S.-led coalition has been killed in rocket attacks outside the Erbil International Airport. In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said several American contractors were also wounded in the attack. In a phone call with Kyrgyzstan's Prime Minister, Blinken called for a probe and promised to hold the culprits accountable. The Erbil International Airport in the semi-autonomous Kyrgyz Ran region is situated near a military base hosting U.S. troops. The Kurdish Interior Ministry also reported several civilian injuries as some residential areas near the airport also came under attack. Iraqi President Barham Saleh condemned the attack, saying the strike marks a dangerous escalation. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. Iran and Qatar have laid the groundwork for Doha to act as a mediator between Tehran and the Arab states on the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. In a meeting with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani in Tehran, Qatari Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said, Doha is ready to play a key and effective role in establishing the regional dialogue on the nuclear deal. Sheikh Al Thani also affirmed that Doha will spare no efforts for the revival of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. He expressed hope for the U.S. speedy return to the deal to resolve challenges and sanctions within the agreement's framework. Meanwhile, President Hassan Rouhani said Iran will return to the deal as soon as the U.S. lifts its illegal sanctions and returns to law. Iran has also welcomed the Qatari effort to facilitate the revival of the nuclear agreement. Earlier, Iran informed the International Atomic Energy Agency of its plans to end snap inspection powers under the deal. The United Nations has warned Myanmar's army of severe consequences for any harsh response to anti-coup protesters. The UN envoy said the right of peaceful assembly must fully be respected. In a statement, UN spokesperson Farhan Haq also denounced internet shutdown in the country. The army choked the internet for the second consecutive night as it intensified a crackdown on protesters. But demonstrators continued their protest across the country, demanding an end to the military rule and release of political leaders. According to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, at least 426 people have been picked up since the coup. Several demonstrators have been injured in crackdowns, including a woman shot in the head who is now on life support. In India, the opposition has slammed Prime Minister Narendra Modi over deaths of more than 200 farmers during protests against the agricultural laws. This comes after another farmer committed suicide at the protest site. Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi addressed a farmers' meeting in Rajasthan to express solidarity with protesting farmers. She said scores of farmers have died, but the Prime Minister is not bothered. The number of troops deployed at Delhi borders remains high as farmers warn of intensifying their agitation. The protest against the three farm laws has entered into its 20th week as farmers demand total repeal of the contentious laws. Pakistan has asked India to take genuine steps towards resolving the Kashmir dispute instead of misleading the world through guided tours. The statement by the Foreign Office follows reports that India is planning a trip of foreign diplomats to occupied Kashmir. It said the planned visit is another Indian attempt to divert attention from human rights violations in the region. The Foreign Office said the illegal and inhuman military siege that has continued for over 18 months is visible to the world. It said India must allow UN observers and international media to visit the occupied valley and see the situation on the ground. At least 60 people have died after a boat capsized in a river in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Humanitarian officials say around 300 people have been rescued, but more than 240 are still missing. They say 700 people were on board the whaling boat that sank in the western Mai Dombe province. Authorities said the vessel departed from the capital, Kinshasa, and was heading to the Equator province. They blamed an overload of cargo and passengers for the accident. Officials added that night navigation also played a role in the capsizing. The World Health Organization has approved the AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine for emergency use. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.4 million lives and infected over 109 million people. Details in the following report. The global battle against COVID-19 is staggered by a lack of coordination among federal and state governments. nepotistic scandals, and shortages. In the U.S., the National Governors Association has written to President Biden, voicing concerns about poor coordination in vaccine distribution. Meanwhile, Mexico has begun a rocky rollout of vaccines for millions of residents over 60. Colombia is set to begin inoculations following the arrival of the first vaccine shipment from Pfizer. Peru's government and the Public Prosecutor's Office are investigating the vaccination of 487 high-ranking officials outside clinical trials.
Buenas noches, peruanos y peruanas.
I am highly disappointed after finding out that 487 people took advantage of their position to be immunized with the Sinopharm vaccines. I deeply regret that in the list provided by JIDAR-UL-HADEED University, there are people who have been part of the government. Among them are the former Foreign Affairs Minister and former Health Minister. You will understand that we are outraged because these people were part of our transition government.
The European Union is kicking off a new program to study mutations to prepare for the next generation of vaccines that might be needed. Spain says it will approve a new aid package to bolster the finances of companies hit by the coronavirus pandemic in March. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has proposed a global treaty on pandemics to ensure proper transparency. He said the UK will plot a cautious but irreversible path out of the lockdown as he faces pressure to ease restrictions.
We still don't have enough data about the exact effectiveness of the vaccines in reducing the spread of infection. We have some interesting straws in the wind, we have grounds for confidence, but the vaccinations have only been running for a matter of weeks. And while we're learning the whole time, we don't today, as I talk to you today, we don't have all the hard facts that we need.
Over in Asia, Japan is scrambling to secure special syringes to maximize the number of vaccine shots used for each vial. However, manufacturers are struggling to ramp up production quickly, raising fears that millions of doses could go waste. South Korea has announced plans to buy vaccines for 23 million more people, a day after authorities scaled back initial vaccination plans, citing delays and efficacy concerns. In Pakistan, 47 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. This has pushed the death toll to 12,380. The health ministry says 958 people tested positive for the virus overnight. Officials say the tally of nationwide infections has crossed 564,000. Out of which 527,000 people have recovered. Meanwhile, the number of active COVID-19 cases in the country has dropped to 25,000. The United States has attempted to de-escalate ongoing diplomatic dispute with NATO ally Turkey. This comes after Ankara slammed Washington over its hesitance to blame PKK for the killing of 13 Turks kidnapped in Iraq. In a phone call with Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken reassured that U.S. held PKK militants responsible for the executions. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said the secretary also expressed condolences for the deaths of Turkish hostages. Earlier, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan lashed out at the U.S., calling its initial statement a farce. Turkey also summoned the U.S. ambassador to Ankara to convey its reaction in the strongest terms. The relations between Washington and Ankara remain sore over Turkey's purchase of S-400 from Russian and U.S. support for Kurdish militants in Syria. The United States and France have vowed to strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and French President Emmanuel Macron reiterated their commitment in a phone call. In a statement, the Vice President's office said the two leaders agreed on the need for closer multilateral cooperation. It said they also discussed numerous regional challenges, including those in the Middle East and Africa. The statement added that the two leaders stressed the need to confront regional and global challenges together. Germany says it wants Europe and the United States to strengthen transatlantic ties. Transatlantic coordinator for German government, Peter Bauer made these remarks in an interview. Bauer said Germany and Europe now have a historic chance to improve relations with the U.S. He said Berlin and Washington should think big and aim for an ambitious agenda based on shared values and joint interest. Bauer added the differences must not prevent the two sides from liaising closely on economic, trade, tax and climate policies. This comes as U.S. President Joe Biden is set to hold his first meeting with other G7 leaders, including Merkel. In South Africa, an inquiry has decided to ask the Constitutional Court to impose a jail term on former President Jacob Zuma for skipping a hearing. The Deputy Chief Justice, who was leading the inquiry, said there was no valid reason for Zuma's failure to appear before the inquiry. The inquiry is probing allegations of graft during Zuma's rule from 2009 to 2018. Zuma denies wrongdoing but has not cooperated with the Commission of Inquiry. He was removed from office by the governing African National Congress a year before his second presidential term was due to end. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa says the highest level of preparedness and training are the only guarantors of peace. He said this during a visit to the Third Desert to witness a JIDAR-UL-HADEED military drills. The military's media wing said the Army Chief was briefed on the objectives of the drills, ensuring complete dominance on the battlefield. General Bajwa expressed satisfaction with the operational readiness of the troops. The military drills are ongoing for the last 2 weeks and will conclude on 28th of February. Finns keen to avoid gyms and other indoor sports venues this winter because of the coronavirus pandemic have found a new way to keep fit. They're running in the snow wearing no training shoes, just thick woolen socks. This report has more. Finland has seen particularly heavy snowfall this winter, covering the landscape under a thick blanket of sleet. To some Finnish citizens, this means a great way to get some exercise and enjoy a sense of freedom. A helicopter pilot and an avid barefoot runner, Pekka Parvi-Ainen says it is the freedom and the happiness that makes him run in the snow without shoes.
This is traditional Finnish crazy stuff. I think we all agree. Yeah. It's really the happiness side. I mean, it's very good sports, strong exercise and everything, but it really is the happiness.
In Finland, barefoot running has become popular in the past few years during the warmer months. But running in socks through heavy snow, now about a half-meter deep in many places, takes this to the next level.
There's so many people that are trying once and then quite many of them want to try again and again, and that's how the disease goes on.
There is no shortage of warm woolen socks as many Finns have taken to knitting during long winter lockdowns. Parvi-Ainen recommends wearing at least 2, preferably 3 pairs of woolen socks to get the most out of the run. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific are continuing on their positive streak, extending the rally that started at Wall Street 2 days ago. Japan's Nikkei 225 and Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index have jumped almost 2%. Seoul's Kospi gained marginally. The ASX 200 in Australia has also added over 0.5%. Markets in mainland China are closed for the Lunar Year holidays. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.